All right, brothers and sisters, I'm going to give you poverty part 2. This is going to be, how you doing, sisters? This is going to be Elihu's University. Yeah, thanks, E. This is going to be Elihu's University Poverty 102. This is going to be your sophomore year of poverty, all right? And each degree as you move up, I'm going to give you some heavier shit. All right, and I told you before, I think I left off talking about that poverty. When I mention the word poverty, I want you to immediately think of resources, okay? Poverty is all about resources, okay? Now, some resources can be a need and some resources can be a want, all right? But that doesn't really matter, you know what I mean, when it's done systematically, okay? And by systematically, I mean when it's done by design, all right? And then white people have pretty much mastered how to systematically distribute poverty and how to systematically distribute wealth. You know what I mean? In other words, their schools don't look like your schools, their homes don't look like your homes, and their libraries don't look like your libraries. Their grocery stores don't look like your grocery stores, you know? You go in most urban environments and shit, and you go into a supermarket, right? And you might be in the fruit and vegetable section and shit, you know? Let me see you do some shit like ask to see the produce manager. Well, they don't got no goddamn produce manager. They got a store manager, and that's all the fuck you're getting, you know? But if you go into a white neighborhood and shit, you know what I'm saying? Those white supermarkets have things like produce managers, you know what I mean? So if you seen a particular fruit or vegetable or something and you needed to know, you know, hey, this looks interesting. Like there's some different types of cactuses out there that are great, you know what I mean, for people with diabetes and things of that nature. And they have high pH levels. In fact, most cactus-based foods are above 7 pH. You know what I mean? And there aren't too many foods that have a pH number above 7, all right? And above 7 and above are what's recommended. But cactuses are. And there's some different types of Mexican cactuses and stuff that are edible and things of that nature, right? But most black people aren't familiar with these type of vegetables and they don't know how to prepare them. You know what I'm saying? And in order to find out, you're either going to have a Hispanic, you know, associate or whatever, someone that you could talk to, or you're going to have to go into the supermarket and speak to the produce manager. You know what I mean? So again, that's a thing about a systematic design way that they distribute resources, you know what I'm saying, or make resources available, okay? And you need to understand that shit, man. They can turn the faucet on when they want, how much they want, you know, and where the fuck they want. You know what I mean? Demographically. You know what I'm saying? You know, most people understand how that shit works. You can take a Sunday drive and shit, and you can leave your, you know, your suburban neighborhood and shit. And then you do what? As you start approaching what's called the hood. That's when the windows roll up and the doors get locked, right? And you tell the kids, lock the doors and roll the windows up, right? You know what I'm saying? And they have what's called, like in the workforce, they have things like called a glass ceiling and things of that nature. You know what I mean? Well, they have also invisible boundary lines, you know, when it comes to demographics. You know what I'm saying? Some people used to refer to these invisible demographic lines in terms of like across the tracks. You know what I'm saying? Those people on that side of the tracks, you know what I mean? They're more poor or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So you have such things that do exist that are considered what's called invisible boundary lines. All right. So another thing I want you to understand when you start speaking about poverty is know that it's all about resources. Okay. And that white people can distribute poverty systematically. You know what I mean? Where they want to distribute it, how often they want to distribute it, and they can distribute it, you know, a lot, or they can distribute a little. Okay? They can also do the same, they can also play this same distribution game with resources as far as currency is concerned. And that's why they have certain entities set up, such as the stock market, okay? And you have certain entities like the Federal Reserve who sit there and they determine the interest rate for money, okay? And that's a form of When the Federal Reserve determines the interest rate for money, that's a form of them systematically controlling resources, okay? And you need to understand that. You know what I mean? Because by whatever number they set the interest rate for money at, they can cause inflation, deflation, or they can cause a recession. You know what I mean? Which is all just little words they invented to keep people confused or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So that's another way that they can control resources systematically. All right. You saw a systematic control of resources in the form of gasoline. All right. They use things like invasion of a country. When they invaded the country, and if you're American and you invade the country, you go into another person's country and you kick their ass and take their oil, then from a analytical standpoint, the cost of oil in your own country should get cheaper. Okay, but they didn't do that. They went into another person's country, kicked their ass, and took their oil, right? And instead of it getting cheaper, what did they do? They raised the prices. You know what I mean? Because, you know, whoever pays the fiddler calls the tune. So they had all the oil and they could set the prices to whatever the fuck they wanted. You know what I mean? That's another thing that you do when you want another people's currency. You know what I mean? You submit to a person's will to govern the resource to you. And most black people have submitted to another people's form of resource distribution. You understand what I'm saying? Whether that's food, whether that's gasoline, whether that's goddamn money, whether that's goddamn jobs. You understand what I'm saying? All these type of things. So one of the things that we're going to have to do as black people is, first we're going to have to get some food sovereignty. We're going to have to become sovereign, you know, independent in the field of agriculture and feeding ourselves. We have to be able to feed our own people. Don't worry about jobs and all that shit right now, because you ain't got jobs ain't as high as a priority as long as you have a food source that's you know, dependent and reliable. You know what I'm saying? So it would be a great idea that if we had some form of structure set up where at least unemployed black people could volunteer their services and their labor while they're unemployed looking for another job, then they should be laboring in the springtime and in the fall. You know, so when the springtime, they should be what? Planting food and you know, in black land bases, right? And if they're unemployed in the fall, these people should be volunteering some harvesting time. You know what I mean? It's like a co-op of sorts. You know what I'm saying? So at least those individuals who are unemployed, at least they won't have a problem eating because they contributed, you know what I'm saying, in the form of labor to the goal of, you know, creating a agricultural food program. See, these are also some of the ideas I wanted to start talking to you guys about. Those who demonstrated or showed an interest in doing something other than posting fucking memes. You know what I'm saying? For the next fucking 6 months to a year. Posting the same shit. It took me forever to get motherfuckers to lay off of the goddamn Egyptian goddamn memes. You know what I'm saying? Stop living in the fucking 4,500 years ago and shit. Okay, we know these motherfuckers, all our ancestors were black and we built the pyramids and shit, but how long you gonna stay there? You know what I'm saying? How long you gonna hang around that store? You know? You can't live in the past. It's great to know, and we can utilize that in the form, you're supposed to utilize that information in the form of an ambition as strength. You know what I mean? So, you know, it's not meant for you to stay stuck in that place, man. And some of our people are stuck in that place. Some people hung around a little longer than they should have. And some learned and saw what they could see and learned what they could learn and they moved on. You know what I mean? Some people say, man, you know, how you know all that stuff? I don't know shit, man. You know, I'm a student. I'm one who studies every day, all day. I try to learn something every fucking day. But what I don't do is I don't get complacent and stay stuck on one particular field of study. You know what I'm saying? I compile resources from all different areas, you know, of science, you know, and things of that nature. My weakest area of study would be mathematics. You know what I mean? I'm more into things like I'm more into sociology and shit like that. You know, the study of people. You know what I mean? Societies, civilizations, and shit like that. And sociology and history are where my interest lies the most, you know? And if you study history, you'll become quite, you know, you'll have at least a good understanding. I don't want to say knowledgeable, because knowledge is an endless pursuit for a human being. You know what I mean? It's an endless pursuit. You know what I mean? It has no finish line or none of that shit. You know, you're like a goddamn, when you chasing knowledge and wisdom and understanding, you're like a hamster on a wheel, man. You know? But you're a happy hamster on a wheel, you know? You don't mind being on a wheel because the wheel is where you want to be, right? Because you're pursuing knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. All right? So, this has been Poverty 102. I hope I gave you a little bit more understanding on systematic poverty. Poverty by design. You know what I mean? There's nothing coincidental about it. It's all by design, but none dare call it a conspiracy. This is Brother Elihu. Peace.